With the championship just days away from starting, it's time to look ahead to our first clash of the season, Coventry versus Hull. Frank will be fairly pleased how the end of the season turned out, having joined Coventry halfway through, ending in 5th spot only to be brutally knocked out in the playoffs, and since then we've made some smart additions in the right places. However, last season we did concede a few sloppy goals and perhaps should have scored more than we did. It also raised some questions, tactically, on how we're going to deal with teams that set up in low blocks. Frank will be wanting to get off to a flyer, and he'll be no stranger to the fact that we're very slow starters to the season. Hull start their season with a new manager, Sergei Yakirovich. He'll be wanting to turn the tide and have a much better performance than last year, having finished 21st, only surviving on the final game of the season. Having faced transfer restrictions from the EFL, Hull have actually still made some really strong signings. The question is, can they translate that into the championship? There's certainly a lot of quality, and I think Hull are actually being slightly overlooked this season. Kicking straight off in how we expect these teams to line up, Frank typically opts for a 4-2-3-1, and whilst no insight from the kit man, we would expect Lampard to have a really strong first 11 for that first game of the season, and this is what we think it will look like. Hull will line up in a similar fashion of a 4-2-3-1, and with the players they brought in, there is some questions on how they'll line up on the first day of the season, and perhaps more interestingly, we'll see if Hughes actually starts the season with the amid interest from Coventry. So how can we expect Hull to play? Well, the challenge here is we don't know the work that's gone on behind the scenes with the new manager. However, we can make some assessments based on their performance last year. First, looking at defensive lines. Now, Hull as a team typically sit a lot deeper than that of Coventry. You can see the blue line indicating the defensive line of Coventry and the orange line of Hull sitting just that touch deeper. And that's replicated with their attacking lines, not pushing as high up the pitch as Coventry. And then when we look at goal locations, there's a reasonable spread, but however, there's quite a few from outside the box, and that's reflected in their XG and the actual goals scored. Then when we see assist location, you can see their tendency to perhaps put the ball in behind for medium to longer range passes. And then when we look at last season's stats in terms of expected goals, you'll see Hull sat in 17th place. And you can actually see they decreased to 24th when it comes to goals per match, which again just shows that their strikers aren't firing. Hull are strong as in their defence and their goalkeeper. They only conceded 1.2 goals per match, which put them in 8th position. Coventry in 13th at 1.3. As we look at their top 5 goal scorers for last year, you can really see they struggle in front of goal, with their top scorer only scoring 6 goals. And then when we actually look who carries on into the new season, only 2 of those top scorers remain. Possession-wise, they're fairly well contested. However, playing against Coventry, I would expect Coventry to have a dominant share of the ball. We can't go into a tactical breakdown without mentioning key players, and one of those key players is the Hull goalkeeper, Ivor Pandor, who has an exceptional save rate for the championship and played an absolute blinder in both fixtures versus Coventry. Now, another key player for Hull is Kamara. Now, as they progress the ball up the pitch, they often tend to favour the left-hand side, and they leave big gaps on that right. However, they often look for these long balls over and switching play and finding where he's got acres of space, often where the defender has left him. If he can't get through and dribble his own way through, he's happy to cut back to the defender, who will also help and support those runs. I think as Cov fans, that play looks all too familiar for us. Another player that looks bright is Kyle Joseph for them up front. Now, he causes big issues with his strength and his size and can be a real handful for defenders and certainly suit a team playing a longer ball or perhaps looking to break in transition. Now, as mentioned, Coventry are likely to set up in that 4-2-3-1. I'm expecting them to hold a lot of possession and, well, be the dominant players in the game. I'd expect the team to sit really high up the pitch, showing off that high defensive line, breaking into more of a 4-4-2 formation when we lose the ball, just to ensure a really effective high press. And that's something we did a really good job on throughout the friendlies. For Coventry, you're going to be seeing a lot of wing play, that being dominant with Ephron Mason-Clark going to be a key player for Coventry, and also Sakamoto. We know how good he is on the wing, but you're also going to see him cut inside and leave space for the right back to overlap and effectively get more balls into the box. Question is, can our strikers get onto the end of them? Now, I think it's likely that Sheaf is going to start in this more central defensive midfield position, and I know a lot of you would like to see this man, Victor Tor. He has great creativity and he's certainly very dangerous being direct in those final central thirds. However, he does lack that physicality that I think Lampard will want from this game. This is going to be a really patient game. I don't think you're going to see any rushing from Coventry. It's all going to be very planned out and meticulous, and that's the reason I think Sheaf and Grimes are going to be in those central defensive midfields, just to offer more security in terms of transitions. And when we lose the ball, I think you're going to see them sit slightly deeper as opposed to a Torp who can push forward. I think if things aren't moving in the right direction in the 60th to 70th minutes, I think then you'll start to see Torp replace Sheaf, who can offer that more directness through the middle. I think you'll see Thomas Asante starting over Sims and Wright. I'm not sure Wright is fully fit yet. However, Thomas Asante offers quite a lot of pace in behind, which I think is something that we'll look to deploy. And he also is a very good presser of the ball, which again, I think we'll be looking to deploy by a lot. Now, I'm just going to touch on a few concerns from fans in terms of that left-back region. Well, we have recruited in Brow, however, he hasn't really featured, and I think that's probably Lampard just easing him into English football and adapting. I think De Silva has really stepped up in recent games and towards the end of last season and throughout the friendlies, so I think you're going to see him step up. I think he's going to have a really good performance against Hull. He's got something to prove, and he wants to battle for his place. And the goalkeeper. And, well, we just signed a new goalkeeper in Rushworth, who's a very high-quality shot stopper. However, that moment in that friendly is, well, fresh in people's minds. Now, I think this is a tactical decision by Lampard that we'll see throughout the game. I'm just going to show some images here from the St. Pauli game, and you'll see that there's quite a lot of occasions where the goalkeeper is way out of his box and almost playing as a centre-back with our split defenders. Now, there's a reason for why he would do this. Last season, there was one clear thing that Coventry struggled with, and that's a team that deployed a low block. And as we progress the ball forward, the space becomes limited and the options are limited too. And that in turn makes our attack very one-sided, and if the defence has that on lockdown, well, there's no real plan B. With a goalkeeper that's able to step up, the centre-backs are able to split, the right and left back are able to progress the ball, and it leaves this gap. The opposition team need to press this, so they have to step up as a team. And what that does is it changes the shape of the game, and Rushworth can pause for a moment with his studs on top of the ball and wait for that moment for an opportunity to appear. And what he's looking for is a lot of space to appear, not only space for our left and right back, but also Grimes and Sheaf, our central attacking midfielder, but also more key space in behind, which is something our attackers love. Again, just gone on a freeze frame here, you can see the front three for St. Pauli having to press that and look at the space it's left for the team in behind. So it's really going to change the game and perhaps something that we'll look forward to. After his mistake, I noticed that Rushworth was a lot more conservative with retaining the ball and actually shifted it on quicker. However, I do think it's something we'll be moving forward, and I just think that it will work for us. I'll quickly into some players to watch, some key players throughout the game. For Coventry, that's Matt Grimes. He's going to be the midfield maestro. He's going to control the game. You're going to see a lot of possession being run through him. Ephron Mason-Clark on that left wing, I think he's going to be really dangerous. I think he's going to be able to get a load of crosses into the box. And the last time they played, he had them on toast. Sakamoto, again, we know his game. He's so dangerous in those wing areas, and I think he's going to be really dangerous for this game as well. Jay De Silva, I think he's going to have a top-notch defensive performance. Here I am going to eat my words, but I think he's going to step up. I think he's going to be fantastic. And Victor Torp, if things aren't going our way, I think he can come on and really change the game, so look out for those players. Players to watch for Hull is Ivor Pandor, a fantastic goalkeeper and could really make us frustrated on the day, so hopefully we can get one past him. Lundstrom comes on loan for Hull and will be his first competitive game for them. Now, I'm not sure if he'll start or not, or if they'll need some adapting to the team. However, he's very experienced and I think he'll bring a lot to Hull, so he's just going to be a player to watch. Abu Kamara, as we discussed, he's very dangerous and sort of floats around and sort of pops up in these positions. A very dangerous player. Kyle Joseph, a very strong, very menacing player, could cause a lot of issues for our centre-backs. And also Eni Destin, again, we don't know a lot about him, but he's very strong, very tall and very good in the air. Get on to score predictions, and this is how I can see the game going. I can see Coventry holding a lot of possession and being the dominant force in the game. And I can expect them to be, well, more shorter to medium length passing and being quite conservative on the ball, looking down the wings to find opportunities into the box. Hull, on the other hand, I can expect more medium to longer range passing, switching play over to their right wing Kamara to create their attacks and ultimately get crosses into the box as well. I can see Coventry having a really high press as opposed to Hull's slightly lower block, but I think you could see them drawing them out with some of the new tactics in place. Now, I would expect to see a high volume of crosses from Coventry versus Hull's more balls in behind and longer balls. I would expect a high volume of shots on target from Coventry versus Hull's low volume of shots on target. However, that said, I would expect them to have a slightly higher XG quality per shot, which could create quite a balanced match in terms of expected goals. Overall, I expect it to be quite a low-scoring match with both really good shot stoppers in the net. I don't imagine there's going to be too many goals in there. I think it's going to be some strong defensive battles, particularly if Kyle Joseph starts, and we've obviously got some menacing players on our own, a lot of crosses into the box. I think it's going to be a real challenge for Hull to keep us out, and I think ultimately it may come down to defensive errors, particularly with our high press and their balls in behind. It could come down to who can make the least errors, but I also think it's going to come down to how well our strikers can perform. I know we're going to create a lot of chances within the game, and it's just if we can take them. Now, if any of you have seen the last video where we talked about match prediction models and created one to predict the league, we're also going to run it through this game, and from that it takes a lot of the historic data, gameplay, the play styles, previous stats, and it creates a result. And for this game, it's gone for a 1-1. However, I really think we could sneak it if our strikers are on form, but the model has gone 1-1. You tell me, what's your predictions for the game, and I'll see you there. Thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate your time. Cheers.